Akiba Maid War is a weird anime to present on paper. Take the idea of a Yakuza game, from someone who hasn't actually played a Yakuza game, replace the Yakuza with maids, and up the violence to 10. You've got Akiba Maid War. My only exposure of this anime over the years before watching were these two memes of the protagonist, Nagumi Wahira, spitting out a bowl of ramen she very hastily consumed, and her laughing at some piece of paper, both of which would be big spoilers had I given the context behind these scenes. But let me not get ahead of myself. Spoiler warning, of course. Akiba Maid War is a black comedy maid gang original anime produced by Cygames. Yes, that's Cygames, and animated by PA Works. It aired in the fall 2022 season and has since been regarded as somewhat of an overlooked gem. Remember, this came out during the same season of some of the biggest hitters in modern anime like Chainsaw Man, Blue Lock, Bocchi the Rock, and the return of the Bleach anime. These animes don't have any correlation to each other, but it speaks volumes to how varied but also competitive that season was. So this anime, with its deceiving cutesy maids, ironically sticks out in a way to lure you in. I actually had no idea that this was going to be a darker, violent crime drama / comedy, so imagine my surprise at the beginning of the first episode that starts off with a very somber atmosphere, only to be surprised even more when a maid gets shot to death by another maid. This anime starts off very bold and leaves you with that intense first impression before cutting to the equally bold opening. It doesn't try to disguise itself for what it is, and even when watching a hopeful slice-of-life girl making it to her dream job as a maid in Akihabara, you know that sooner or later, things will pop off. In contrast to an anime like Puella, Magi, and Madoka Magica that, at least in the beginning, tries to cover up its darker themes with its opening and cutesy character design in order to let the juxtaposition hit that much harder, you'll come to find that Akiba Maid War plays its identity as a violent black comedy completely straight. There's no will they, won't they, it's a when will they, and because the anime doesn't ever try to hold back, you, as a viewer, will either be turned off if this kind of stuff isn't your cup of tea, or be intrigued to see where it goes. Maybe out of morbid curiosity. Akiba Maid War handles itself more as a parody, subverting the typical maid moe with the violence, ruthless attitudes, and gang-like society. Because the anime does this, there's a lot of moments where fun, wholesome activities you'd see in other animes like festivals or the mandatory baseball episode become high-stakes rigged competitions in order to establish the dominant order of the Creatureland group. Creatureland being the big maid cafe conglomerate in this universe. I will say that this subversion makes it exciting for the viewer to see what will come next. Like, what possible circumstances could this group get into that will involve life-threatening actions? Most of the conflicts are episodic, and the show takes advantage of this by surprising you. It's very rollercoaster-like. The protagonist cafe group, Oinky Doink Cafe, is filled with a good variety of personalities. Nagumi Wahira, the main, is an optimistic and bright girl who's suddenly being thrust into this world full of violence, control, and keeping fronts. For all intents and purposes, Nagumi should be the kind of person that wouldn't last a day in this society. It then makes it all the more emotional to watch her make it through the hellhole of the Akihabara maid scene because she's the one character who is unapologetically earnest. Nagumi isn't a character who's stuck and won't ever come to accept ways of maid life, but rather one that wants to see it change. There are still times where Nagumi is faced with heavy, status quo changing events. Living in this kind of life is bound to taint anyone, and seeing that one bright light in the story dim makes you want to cheer for her that much more, like cheering for your Oshi or something. The rest of the main cast is great too, and the writing does a good job in lending itself to some fun dynamics. Ranko Manen is a stoic, awkward gunwoman who can't seem to capture that moe spirit at her current age. Her soldier-like mannerism plays into the anime's stark contrast between the cutesy maid front and the violent grunt work. Even her use of pronouns and speech are cold. But the anime does a good job in developing her character subtly into someone you care about and actually shares a lot in common with Nagumi, which makes it no surprise why the two are paired up so much. You really begin to care for every character when you've seen how they ended up in this life and how much they cherish the cafe and each other. It's the same kind of feeling you get when watching a cute girls doing cute things anime, except these girls don't always do cute things. In fact, this violent comedy actually shares a lot in common with a CG DCT anime. The cute girl main cast, the episodic story structure, and the hijinks, all just coated with a lot more blood. If you look online for discussions about this anime, there will probably always be a reference to the Yakuza, or more accurately, they'll point out how Akiba Maid War pays homage to old Yakuza films and tropes. I can't comment on how well the anime executes these tropes based on experience, and my only real frame of reference is Yakuza 0, which my inattentive Rs could only finish one chapter. Sorry, Roger. But I can say with some surface level knowledge and with this way of thinking in mind, that Akiba Maid War does its job well as a parody. It unabashedly spits out trope after trope. You've got the business at the bottom of the hierarchy with the boss at the top breathing down their necks, the menial death of goons, and the Yakuza-esque ending song, just to name a few. Because Akiba Maid War is written like this, the cracks begin to show if you start taking it too seriously and begin asking questions, like why are the police mostly absent in this universe? Why do the bystanders do absolutely nothing? Do the Yakuza exist in this universe, and why can't I see them go to war with the maids? Maybe that last one's just me. It's not necessarily a bad thing to have those questions while watching, but this anime isn't concerned with building out a fleshed out society, or even one that does make sense. If that's what you're looking for, then you won't be satisfied. This anime really asks you to suspend your disbelief and sit back and watch it all unfold. While this might not be a very high IQ anime, it's not trying to be. I argue that the irony of a super serious story that plays itself straight with maid cosplay is what makes this a comedy. I'll be honest, when I learned that this was going to be a darker story, I was hoping for a more thorough crime drama. While the premise of maid gangs seems ridiculous, my optimistic brain felt that there was still plenty of opportunities for grander world building, or at least as grand as a comedy could get. You know, maybe something resembling Durarara if you squinted. I get that in retrospect, it's a bit unreasonable to have wanted this, and my expectations were probably too high near the beginning. I can understand the perspective of people who didn't like this anime. The cliches are on the nose, there are plot holes, and all these cute girls are dying. Maybe that last one's just me. My opinion of the anime really soured during two significant deaths. I won't spoil who they were, but it almost turned me off because I just couldn't believe they'd go there. I mean, the build-up was very obviously leading towards it, but because this anime seemingly doesn't hold back on who will be next, they did go there. Initially, I was disappointed that the show wrote them off because of the attachment that I had with these characters. Both of their deaths left their characters in bitter endings without ever getting to that ideal end, and it had that fan in me mildly frustrated. Did it leave more of an impact on me as a viewer? Yeah. And would them living have resulted in better writing and demonstrating the anime's themes? Maybe not. I was still enjoying the show and curious to see where it would go, but I think at the time I very naively thought that these plotlines could have seen happier endings. Despite all that, however, after watching the shocking end of the last episode and sitting through the ending song sung by Nagumi, watching that post-credits scene finally clicked something in me. I wasn't disappointed anymore, and somehow it felt like all that struggle actually paid off in seeing where the maid society ended up in the present day. I'd like to think that that post-credit scene was a little reminder that this obnoxious anime about maids in a crime syndicate isn't super serious. It ended off with a sense of hope, and I think that's why I was left feeling satisfied after finishing it. Might be an odd comparison, but take the ending of the 2017 psychological horror film Get Out by Jordan Peele. Spoiler warning, of course. You sat through an entire movie full of suspense and discomfort that commented on the racial injustices of black people in America, and then right at the end of the movie, the main character is saved, and a small one-liner is dropped by his friend that just makes you laugh and feel good. That's kind of the same feeling that I got with Akiba Maid War's post-credit scene when I saw it for the first time. You've probably realized that I neglected to talk about the animation, music, and all that jazz, but I don't have much to comment on that end. All of the other workings of the anime are quite serviceable to me, and I think that, mixed in with the comedy and irony of the story, makes this anime a very solid watch from PA Works. From the perspective as a Cygames IP, it's a bold experimental anime that certainly stands out in their lineup, and that's a lot coming from the company that produced an anime about zombie girls becoming idols and an entire franchise based on horse girl racing. Here's a fun fact. Did you know that there was a stage play adaptation of this anime that ran in September 2023? Unfortunately, I can only find a preview recording of the first song of the play, but at the very least, I think it looks fun enough to talk about if I were to ever find the whole thing. I realized that Akiba Maid War won't be for everyone. The initial concept of a Yakuza maid society is a novel one, but a lot of people will probably be deterred from this if you're not willing to sit through the exaggerated gangsters, if the episodic high stakes don't appeal to you, or if you know that you'll get tired of Nagumi preaching the anti-violence sentiment. I think this anime deserves its praise when looked at from a comedy lens, and even more so if you can understand the inspirations behind the tropes and story. But even if you don't, heaven knows I don't completely, it's still an enjoyable watch if you sit down and take your mind off all the logic behind it. Maybe I'll see you again, and take care.